welcome to this video. I'm really happy that you're here. Today we're going to look at subsidies and how to apply it to positive production and consumption externalities. It's quite a loaded video. If you haven't already, check out the subsidy series and check out the externality series. That one's a little bit long, but you can try this video without, but maybe it's worth looking at those. I hope I've got the link in the description below. Okay, so to recap, a subsidy is a payment given by the government to a firm. It turns out we're going to use it to solve the underconsumption or underproduction problem that positive externalities cause, and that's going to help us to eliminate the welfare loss in theory. So we've got a whole bunch of definitions to work our way through. One is underconsumption or underproduction, which is when the free market quantity is lower than the social optimum quantity, either due to production or consumption reasons. To make that really clear, I've got a graph, two graphs here. On the left, we have underproduction because the free market quantity of QFM is less than the social optimum quantity of QSO because of a production externality. On the right, we've got the free market quantity again being lower than the social optimum, but this time it was because of consumption. Positive externalities are positive impacts on third parties due to the production or consumption of a good or service. There are some interesting use of terminologies that you can use. Generally, you can say positive externalities, you can group them into external benefits. You might prefer to use plus MEB or minus MEC, that is fine too. You should refer to marginal if you're talking about like single units or additional units, and you should talk about totals if you're referring to everything, just to make that clear what that means. Here I've got two graphs and I've got like a yellow line. That yellow line is the marginal externality at QFM. Okay, and then some other definitions. We've got MSC, marginal social cost, MPC, marginal private cost. I'm not going to chat about them now. They're here if you want to copy them down. Remember, we've got that equation that MSC equals MPC plus MEC, a positive externality being minus MEC, causing MSC to be lower at each quantity than MPC. Same with the MSB vocab, marginal social benefits, marginal private benefits. MEB is marginal external benefits, that externality. In this case, positive MEB because it's a positive externality. Okay, and then again, a total externality, to make that different to like the marginal, so you don't confuse them, is the sum of all like the externalities produced up until QFM, and it's the area between your your split curves up to QFM. I think I've got another challenge question on that if you want to look at that. And I've got the definition there written for you. Okay, welfare loss is the reduction in welfare at QFM compared to QSO, compared to the social optimum. And we're just going to do a little crash course in that right now. So you feel really super secure with this. We're going to look at the total welfare at the free market, total welfare at the social optimum. Then we're going to compare them again. That's still in the externality series, so you can click on that, the relevant video, to look your way through that. I suggest you start from the start because it all kind of builds up. Okay, total welfare at the free market quantity. Just to recap, the free market quantity is where supply equals demand, in this case, where MPC equals MPB. Why MPC is the supply curve? Because firm supply, they are selfish profit maximizers. They want to pay only the cost that they actually must pay. Households are selfish utility maximizers. They only want to demand the good according to how it benefits them. So that explains why QFM, if you kind of keep your eyes peeled with this, QFM is where MPC equals MPB. That's how you always find where your QFM is. Okay, and then the total welfare here, there's a few ways to work it out. We've done kind of all these ways, but the way I'm choosing here is kind of one of the fastest ways, the easiest way kind of to show you in a quick space of time. It's the difference between your MSB and your MSC for all the units produced, and here is the green area. All that is the total welfare that society as a whole has produced because of the production of these goods up until QFM. So even though there's kind of going to be a social welfare loss, it still means that there's lots of welfare at QFM. It's just not going to be maximized. So I've got some details on that, on how you can work out the welfare loss. Again, we've done this before. Right, total welfare at QSO, same approach. Take your MSB minus the MSC and add all those areas up, and you get this larger green area. If you compare these sets of graph at the social optimum, the welfare, and you compare it to the welfare previously at the free market, you will see that the welfare at the social optimum is higher than at the free market, specifically by these smaller green triangles. That's what we refer to as the welfare loss. I mean, there might be some people who call this a welfare gain. I'll explain that in a moment. And as a shortcut, so you don't have to work out like total welfare at QFM and total welfare at QSO and compare them. As a shortcut, just take a look at the units between QFM and QSO and shade in the area between the MSB and the MSC. You'll get that area right. And again, this triangle represents the reduction in welfare at QFM compared to QSO. That's kind of why you can talk about it as a welfare loss. From that point of view, if you kind of define it as compared to QSO. And it means that welfare is not maximized at QFM. You know, society has had this green area in welfare just held back. It hasn't been able to access that. So maybe the government can try and increase this welfare. Maybe the government can intervene with a subsidy, which is what we're going to do now, to gain back or add this potential welfare on. Remember that we only produced at QFM, and that's why we didn't have that green area in welfare. If we had produced at QSO, we would have gained this green area in welfare, so we want to gain that potential welfare. Here's how a subsidy is going to work. Subsidy is going to mean the government is paying indirectly. I don't want to make it seem like they actually are paying, no, because they're giving the money to the firms, which kind of means that the government in part has helped to pay for the marginal private costs of production that the firm would have otherwise faced. So the firm experiences a reduction in their marginal private costs for each unit produced. And to illustrate what that means for each unit produced, means your MPC 1 shifts down, like vertically down to MPC 2. And the gap between that is really important, by the way. Make sure you've got this down. The gap is the size of the unit subsidy. So I've used an example, for example, at quantity 3. Before, it would have cost this firm £5 to make this third unit, and now it costs them £3 to make this. Why? Because the subsidy was 2. So it decreases that cost that the firm faces. And because because the cost is lower that the firm faces, they can produce these units, these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 units, at a cheaper willingness to supply than they were before. Okay, this bit is added info. I've just added this in case somebody got a bit confused how we got from like one equilibrium to the other one. This is actually to do with the price mechanism, with like signaling, rationing, incentive, all these things, which is kind of another topic. So I've kind of added it in here as like a little added bonus, but it's not really a big focus, so I don't really want to talk about it or make it seem like this is a huge thing to worry about if you haven't seen it before. But essentially, the supply curve has shifted right from MPC 1 to MPC 2, and that's going to cause excess supply. Because of the excess supply, prices are going to fall, and the prices fall, which means that demand can expand a little bit and also supply contracts. So I've kind of plotted out that movement in case you are curious. So supply moves from A, B to C, and demand from A to B. But I don't want to talk about that too much, so I'm kind of moving on from that. Okay, so we know that the subsidy is going to shift down MPC. So guess what? I've got a couple pictures here where we've got the MPC curve shifting down vertically to become MPC2. And in this case, I've taken care to make the subsidy just the right size, so that the new equilibrium, which I have written there, will be where MPC2 equals MPB is going to be matching up to where Q2 equals QSO. So you just got to be really careful to make the subsidy large enough. So just to make it clear, make sure it equals your MSE. Make sure it's like on the same line if it's a positive production externality graph. If it's a positive consumption externality graph, maybe this one's tiny bit trickier. So there's nothing to like make it equal to, not so easy to see. But make sure your MPC equals your MPC2, and they meet there, and that lines up nicely with your QSO. So it looks different, but it works the same. Chain of reasoning is the same. The free market is still selfish. We'll still form an equilibrium where MPB equals MPC. Okay, so what's happening to this original welfare loss that we had? Turns out that now, since the quantity 2 is equal to the social optimum, it turns out there will be no market failure, there will be no welfare loss. So welfare is the highest possible, and the government has been successful to increase the welfare in this market. To prove that the welfare here is higher than before, I've done the same steps as I did before. I shaded in the difference between the MSB and the MSC, and if you scan your way back up, or actually maybe I pasted that in below, it's actually the same area as the welfare at QSO. So that just kind of double confirms this to you. So in summary, a subsidy can achieve the social optimum. It can eliminate all the welfare loss by achieving the social optimum. And it can increase that welfare by that original kind of green triangle that we had before. Welfare increases by these green triangles and is now maximized to become... Where's that one gone? All of this green area here. You want to consider the downsides though. So is it worth to increase that green area of welfare with everything that has been spent? So the subsidy is very expensive, and that money could have maybe been better spent elsewhere. So it's not certain whether actually total welfare in society will increase. You know that you're going to increase welfare by this triangle here in this market, but maybe that's taken away welfare from somewhere else. I've added in some couple of extra calculations because sometimes you refer to that in your writing. So just showing you how these line up. We've done these before in some of the other subsidy videos, but how they line up now with the market failure graphs. So total cost of the subsidy per unit times the unit subsidized, that's going to be this yellow box. I'm just going to emphasize that yellow box. It's a rectangle. Consumer benefit is going to be the reduction in the price. That's the benefit that they receive because of the subsidy, which is the green area here at the bottom. Producer benefit is the blue bit. Unfortunately, the producers weren't able to keep all the subsidy to themselves because they ended up cutting the price. They had to cut the price because the subsidy created excess supply. You might want to consider the PED in your analysis. If you do a subsidy with something that's very inelastic, people were kind of buying it before, and the reduction in the price won't really incentivize them to buy too much more. So maybe that's not such a sensible way to encourage more consumption. So that might mean that the market failure may not be fully solved, despite, you know, the graph in this example that I've done today, making it seem that it is possible to achieve the QSO quite easily. Maybe in practice not. We've talked that it is possible that the government could intervene. Maybe they can't increase quantity by much, and maybe they end up spending so much money that actually they end up creating a decrease in total social welfare. That would be an example of something called government failure. Stay tuned for the next video on taxes and these negative externality graphs going into something similar like this. Hope you enjoyed this video and found it useful. Leave a comment and make sure to subscribe if you want to get some more of these videos sent to your YouTube inbox every day or so. Thank you so much. Bye!